promises that he has. And we are going to hold them accountable for their promises.
Sure.
We are going to see how they are going to reduce expenditure.
Right.
So, for instance, yesterday I heard the former Deputy Minister of Finance, the Honorable Abnose Asari, asked him that when you look at the budget of government, the heart of it is compensation and all of that, social intervention programs and what have you. When you say you are going to minimize expenditure, are you saying that you are going to reduce it? Because compensation is where the salaries of public servants lie, salaries of civil servants and what have you. Are you saying you are going to reduce it and all of that? But he alluded to some other things that they are not going to engage in. And so we as a media house, we are going to observe. The budget statement is going to come out. We are going to have a discussion on it, of course, right, Raphael?
Yeah.
We are going to look at whether or not indeed there is going to be some reduction in expenditure for this government. And it is only upon that we can make the argument that indeed they have not just promised scrapping taxes that were bringing in some revenue. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
The Honorable Abnose Asari was the Minister of State at the Finance Ministry.
Yeah.
We are not just going to say that, well, the Finance Minister has said they are going to scrap some taxes. I mean, i.e., the betting tax, the e-levy, right? He said they are going to minimize expenditure. For instance, the betting tax yields about 50 million Ghana cedis annually. And so when we scrap expenditure proportionate to that amount or exactly equal to that amount, right, then there is no need really having that tax in force, because the argument he's making is that by reducing expenditure, the size of that income, you have dealt with scrapping it. I don't know if you get that.
Yeah, I get it.
And so we are going to ensure that that is done. In other words, we are going to use our media house to hold the government to their feet.
Right.
That the government, you promised to do this, and we want to see how they are going to be doing this. And a good way to look at that is to look through the budget and see the allocation of expenditure and how it matches with GDP. And I mean, when you compare that with the promise of revenue targets with respect to GDP.
Right.
So putting all that together, we want to see. I mean, it's a question I didn't see, but I was expecting it. Probably if I had the privilege to be on the vetting panel, I would have asked. Reduce expenditure. The question would be, by what percentage of GDP? I don't know if you get me. So that we know that expenditure is currently this percentage of GDP, and we are going to reduce it to this percentage of GDP, so that we know that indeed, in addition to increasing our revenue from 16.8% of GDP to 18.3% of GDP, our expenditure targets are also going along this tangent. Then the argument becomes complete, and we are able to hold the government to their toes.
Right. I wanted us to just talk a bit before we go into the main meet for today. I think we spent a lot of time talking about it, which is very, very important, because we can't just let the vetting conversations just slide. But one of the things that the Honorable Minister mentioned, Minister Designate mentioned, was that they were going to bring back the road tolls. I don't know your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I've seen some things on social media that about 4 or 3 years ago, he did say road tolls were not needed, and now he's saying road tolls are needed and all of that. But social media, please pardon the Minister of Finance and Secretary. There's work to be done.
Right.
You know, Raphael, the conversation around that is to the extent that when the previous government was introducing the e-levy, the e-levy came as, if you like, we are introducing the e-levy, and in response to that, we are going to do away with road tolls. I don't know if you remember those conversations around the time.
Yeah.
Are you with me?
Yeah, I'm with you.
So the conversation at the time is road tolls are going to go away, and we'll bring e-levy.
Yeah.
So that it will give us that revenue that road tolls was giving us. Is that okay?
Yeah.
And so now, if we are scrapping the e-levy, the road tolls are going to come back.
Okay.
So more or less, in addition to reducing expenditure to be able to deal with e-levy, the revenue e-levy was giving us, is that okay? We will introduce road tolls to also give us some revenue. Maybe some of the questions we would have wanted to know, or maybe some of the things we would have wanted to know from that vetting is how much we are going to be earning. What is the projection from road tolls?
Yeah.
I felt some of these questions were supposed to be asked so that we know the figures. The figures are important, and that will help us in our analysis.
Right. Now,
but we didn't get that, so we may just fall on the historical.
Yeah, but the conversation also has been on the efficiency and the effectiveness. You know, sometimes we argue that, okay, let's bring back road tolls. But what was it like before we decided to scrap it, and why are we bringing it back if those problems still exist?
Yeah, I guess your question.
Because
one, does that problem still exist, or maybe you mean to say if they have not been solved?
Yeah, because if I mean there were rumors had it that the monies don't go to the government as it's supposed to, because there are no systems to check the number of cars that passed in a particular day, and so whoever takes the money at the place, I mean, can pocket some if they want, and and there wasn't any proper structures and all of that. So if those things still exist, then we need to really look into that. Or what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, what you just gave is efficiency at one level, but in principle, to the taxman, efficiency would mean the amount of money it cost me, or how much it cost me to collect a certain amount of tax, should be less than the tax I get.
Right.
And so they may argue along those lines and say we are still being efficient. But of course, I agree with you. That problem ought to be solved, and it ought to be solved well. And I want to believe that the current government, in their bid to reintroduce the road toll, they are going to solve that problem.
Right.
Yeah, because there are many ways to do that. There are really many ways to do that. I've heard some arguments around ways to deal with that. Do we really need to have road tolls? I mean, the toll booths are properly so called to be, and have personnel, employed fully, being paid salary to be collecting that, or there is another way. Cars that move on our roads are supposed to have been registered. Drivers who drive cars have driver's licenses, among other things. Is there a way to digitalize the entire process of paying road tolls so that there is a database that monitors, tracks the amount of road tolls that is being paid, on a monthly basis or on an annual basis? So there are many ways to do that. Are you able to digitalize the process at the toll booth so that you reduce? Because, in terms of the leakages, what you were alluding to was leakages within the system.
Yeah.
With respect to the leakages within the system, it is an issue of having human interaction. Once there are human beings, or you get what I mean. Taking money, and
there's a lack.
There are some holes in our pants, so some of the money should fall off. But once you automate the process and you digitalize it, then there is that clear indication that that can be attenuated or reduced to a certain level. That is really what we look for. So I want to believe that the government would see to it that it's efficient. And the finance minister designate has been talking about efficiency. And so, that is how it works. The things you have said, the things you did mention at your vetting, the things that you used to say, or if you like, advocate for while you were in the position. Now that you are in power, the onus lies on you to do justice to all of those. So we are going to watch it. We are going to see how it's going to go. But I am very optimistic and hopeful because, the Ghanaian business environment is on the path of great recovery. We saw it as the previous government exited, we saw a certain level of recovery and all of that. And I think that should be sustained. Ghana must rise again. It must come back to what it has been known for. And so, yeah, I am optimistic that things are really going to be well.
Right. So if you just tuned in, you're still listening to Business Breakfast on Zed 101.9 FM. And this morning, we're having a conversation with... Emmanuel, who's our economic contributor here. You can follow us on social media. You can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and X at ZFMGH, and then Z Multimedia on TikTok and YouTube. You can also WhatsApp us on 0544321019, 0544321019. Now, very soon we're going to have another conversation with a psychologist or a counselor who are going to talk to on the subject of burnout at the workplace, burnout as an entrepreneur, burnout as a business leader, and what have you. But I'm still on the conversation with Emmanuel, and we're going to wrap up very soon. But Ima, let's switch a bit to the global debt dynamics report that came up last year. We can talk a bit about that. What is that all about?
So the debt report is released by the Bank of Ghana. It just gives us a good understanding of the debt stock of countries across the world, especially low and middle income countries, of which Ghana is a part. And maybe for the purposes of our audience, we may want to just focus on our country, which is Ghana.
Right.
Our total external debt as at the end of, you see, when the debt report is 2024, what that means is that the details of the report is as at the end of 2023. Is that okay?
Right.
All right.
But
total, yeah.
Just before that, Ghana is a lower middle income country, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. I don't know if maybe there's somebody listening to me who doesn't know what a low income country is. Lower middle income country is, then maybe you can just talk a bit about that before we go into the real issues.
All right, sir. A lower middle income country is classified by the World Bank based on its gross national income per capita. Is that okay?
Yeah.
So your gross national income divided by your total population, what that translates into determines where you fall in terms of low middle income country and the rest of them. Now, as of this year, the classification is for countries between $1,000 and I think $45 to $4,255, as in the GNI per capita income, gross national income, per capita income. Yeah, and so that is, we just ran through the GDP per capita of Ghana, and it was around $2,000. I don't know if you remember.
Yeah.
A while ago.
Yeah.
And so that alone puts us within this range, between 1,000 to 4,255.
Oh, okay.
Is that okay?
Right.
So it is just an issue of your GDP, GDP, then we have GNI. I don't want to go into those technical things, but it is just the country's economic growth indicator. It's just a measure of that. So it's your GNI per capita, your gross national income divided by your population. If that is more than $4,255, you go outside the brackets of low middle income countries. You go outside. But if you fall within the range of 1,000 to 4,255, then you would be classified as a lower middle income country.
Right. Okay. So now let's go into the report really. So what are the primary factors contributing to the increase in debt levels among the lower middle income countries, which I'll call LMIC going forward?
All right. So based on the report, this report was as of 2023, and the main factors that contributed to the increase in the debt levels of these countries. Mind you, these countries, maybe it's important for me to give you some characteristics of these countries,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
Yeah. And a good way to look at it is just to look at Ghana. Yeah. These are largely developing countries, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things they are known for is borrowing.
Okay.
In fact, even the developed countries borrow. Look at the debt level of a country like US, Japan. Look at the debt to GDP ratio of that Japan. It's a lot. Maybe let me give you that figure. It's a lot. I'm just trying to find it. It's a lot. And so as I think there was 255%. The debt to GDP ratio of Japan, 255%. So you can imagine. They also borrow a lot. But for the developing countries, they do not have enough money to finance their expenditure. I think Ghana was doing about 70-something percent as of 2023 or so. And you compare that to 255%, you see that Ghana's own was relatively small. Is that okay?
Yeah.
And so these are some of the characteristics of these countries. Yeah, typified, like they like borrowing. Now, one of the main, because the world, maybe before I start giving the factors, it's good to give some background so that everybody understands really what I mean. There is this theory in finance we call the contagion theory. What that theory explains, it more or less looks at the world to be globally integrated. Is that okay?
Yeah.
In other words, how does something that happens in the US, in Russia, in Ukraine, why is it that when something happens there, then it tends to affect the rest of us here? It's affecting someone in Nigeria, someone in Ghana, and what have you. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Now, the theory is basically saying that the behavior or whatever is happening around a certain place tend to spread across other regions because of the global integration of the world. And it spreads rapidly amongst countries or among people in the same world. Is that okay?
Yeah.
So that is really what it is. And so one of the reasons why the debt stocks of these countries increased is because of the economic shocks.
Okay.
Which includes the COVID-19 pandemic, the Russian-Ukraine war, the high global inflation. And so you see what I was explaining earlier.
Yeah.
When things are happening somewhere, then it tends to, as we call it in finance, spill over into other regions of the world.
Right.
And that is really why. And so it looks like if these big giants are suffering, then it trickles down to the low middle income countries. Then elevated interest rates. Now, these economic shocks are actually stifling the growth of the low middle income countries. They are not doing well because of the economic shocks. And so they don't even have enough money. They are not even able to generate sufficient income, right? Now, interest payment is, in other words, you servicing your debt.
Okay.
So they are not even able to do that at all. And the situation is that they further as a result of these economic shocks.
Right.
Is that okay?
Right. But also, still on, I know you want to mention some other ones, but still on the economic shocks. You know, prior to maybe 2020 election, I should say there were conversations about the COVID-19 having effect on the government, upon our economy, the Ukraine war, and all of those things. Does it mean that really that was a case? Because some people thought it was just propaganda.
Please come again.
Now, so I'm saying that ahead of the 2020 election, you know, Ghana, we were struggling a bit financially, as economy. And people were saying, the government at the time was saying that it was just largely based upon the COVID-19. We're blaming the COVID-19, the Ukraine war, and then the global inflation and all of that. And I'm asking that if that is one of the things that causes a surge in the debt levels among the lower middle income countries, is it true? Is it then fair to say that that was the case, and then it wasn't just propaganda?
So it was not propaganda.
Oh, okay.
Even the current government alluded to it at some point. In fact, the current president has alluded to it as well.
Okay.
They know it was not propaganda.
Oh, okay.
It is true that we are affected. I mean, no doubt about that. It is true.
I see. All right.
We were affected. Just I may not want to go into that analysis because although we were affected, we also got some income, some money from the World Bank and what have you.
All of that.
And so there are some that when you look at the data, you realize that yes, Ghana was affected. However, we benefited
as well. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So yes, we were affected. Even the Russia-Ukraine war, we were affected.
Okay.
I think the problem was that maybe for every problem or challenge in the economy, government sought to blame it on the economic shock.
Okay.
And for many, that really didn't gel well because not all our problems came from economic
shocks. Okay. We weren't ready as a country as well, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right, that's fine. So let's go on. I think you talked about the interest rate.
Now, elevated interest rate is something that you see among the LMIC. Low middle income countries. Sorry. Yeah. Now, interest rate for Ghana, for instance, is about 27%, right? Monetary policy rate.
Right.
It is. I told you the last time. It signals monetary tightening. Is that okay?
Yeah.
So the tightening monetary policies in these major advanced economies has led to borrowing costs of, higher borrowing costs for the low and middle income countries, and that is increasing the level of their debt. Then another one will be currency depreciation. And the points I'm raising are points that everyone listening to me can relate with. Everyone listening to the issue of economic shock spilling over to Africa and to Ghana and all of that. We know COVID, Russia-Ukraine war, and what have you. We've seen the spillover effect, haven't we? We have all seen that. Currency depreciation, we have seen that. You owe in dollars. Is that not the case?
Yeah.
So long as you owe in dollars and your currency depreciates, what happens? Your debt stock increases. You owe $500, right? And at the time, it was 1 cedi to $1. And now it is 5 cedi to $1. It means now you owe how much? $2,500. Just because, you still owe $500, but because of the exchange rate, you would need 2,500 Ghana cedis to pay for the same level of debt.
Right.
So the currency depreciation also played a huge role in that. And this is according to the debt report issued by the World Bank.
I see. So currency depreciation also has a role, I guess.
Yes, it does.
Okay. All right. So let's move on. I want to ask, how does the rising debt burden impact the economies? When I talk about the economy, I'm talking about the lower middle income countries and their ability to achieve their sustainable development goals.
Well, the first will be financial constraints. Earlier I was speaking about the fact that by collapsing 7 ministries, there is fiscal savings, and that gives the government space to do other things. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Now, fiscal constraints. Let's say fiscal constraints. Now, high debt servicing costs, it limits your fiscal space. Fiscal, what the government does. Is that okay? Yeah. Government spending and government expenditure and all of that. Now, because you have a higher cost of debt, or you'll be paying a lot of money on your debt, right? It reduces your ability to invest in essential public services like education, like health, and other social intervention programs. In fact, including infrastructure.
Right.
I don't know if you get it.
Yeah, I get it.
So one of the main impacts is that it curtails the ability of the government to be able to allocate financial resources into some productive sectors of the economy, in addition to providing essential public services to the citizenry, because money that they could have used for such services or to do such things would now be used to service the my brother, debt servicing is obligatory. It is a contractual agreement between the one going in for the debt and the one issuing. The one issuing the debt and the one that is giving out money to the country.
Right.
And that is why when you are unable to pay, that is why when the government of Ghana was unable to pay its debt, you heard of domestic debt exchange program and what have you.
Yeah.
These are big issues because for debt you are supposed to pay. Even on the books of businesses, you do earnings before interest and tax. And your interest payments are obligatory. You have to pay that before you pay your shareholders anything at all.
Right.
So it is not as though someone can say, then government should go ahead and do what he wants to do. When there is money left, then we go and pay our debt. No, that is not how it works. As for your debt, it's a mainline item on your expenditure.
Right.
You are supposed to service your debt annually to a certain extent. And I think the finance minister said it yesterday that they are supposed to pay a certain amount of debt in February. And so it just tells you. So one of the first impact is the fiscal constraint.
Right.
Government will not have space to be able to allocate funds to some productive sectors of the economy in addition to providing some essential public services like education, health, and infrastructure to the Ghanaian citizenry.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
another one.
Yeah. Go ahead.
It stifles our economic growth. Debt overhang can hinder economic growth by discouraging investment, reducing private sector credit availability, and increasing overall uncertainty in the economy. My brother, would you lend money to someone who already owes a lot and is unable to pay?
No, I actually even saw an article. I think Reuters actually published that, and there was this man, senior economic advisor, one of the countries, I think UK or so, who came to say that Ghana must pay must service their debts to the US before they can go back to the IMF. The finance minister designate actually mentioned that they're going to go back to the IMF.
Yes, he didn't say we said they move. I see. It was a false media reportage.
Right.
So let's pay to what is now said.
I see.
They put or they made.
All right.
Yeah, but you can go on with the point.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a fair point.
So that is that. But also, I know debt distress.
Yeah.
Yes, it can also affect that, isn't it?
Yes, it would. But maybe I want to be sure we are on the same page.
Right.
When you say debt distress, are you saying the situation where the country faces immense difficulties in meeting their debt repayment obligations?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Yeah, then you are spot on. If that is the case, then you are spot on, because that would be the other impact of rising debt. Because as your debt is increasing, and that's why I'm even saying that we will not even want to borrow money to you again, but let's grant it.
Right.
That we will be borrowing money to you. You will not be, because your debt is rising. With the same income handles, or in other words, with the same income level that the country has.
Yeah.
It's accumulating more debt. That is why the reason why we went to the IMF was because of debt unsustainability.
Okay.
And there had to be some austerity measures that were fronted on the country. The whole point is that we came to a point of debt distress. You know what distress would mean in terms of psychology and all those things.
Yeah.
It was similarly the same issue. Our debt levels had exacerbated to the point that we were just in crisis. Let me put it that way. We were just in an economic crisis.
Right.
And we were unable to deal with that. And that is one of the impacts of rising debt. On low and middle income countries. It's just unfortunate that maybe I'm using Ghana as a case study. But Ghana is a low and middle income country. And Ghana has gone through these issues. That is why I can easily.
Right. Okay, tomorrow I would want to, because of time, we would have to go. But tomorrow I would want us to focus really on Ghana. I think today we've been able to establish the general conversations around the debt and all of that and how it affects countries and especially lower middle income countries. So tomorrow I would want us to go take a snapshot on Ghana's external debt, because we recently we were named as one of the very indebted countries to the IMF.
We're the second.
The second, exactly. I mean. Yeah. And it is something that we must talk about. So we'll try to understand what exactly it is, what the compositions are for the Ghana's external debts, and then so we can talk largely about the debt service burden, debt to GNI ratio, and all of that. Then maybe we can now focus on looking ahead. Yeah, but just before we go, what are today's exchange rates from the Bank of Ghana? Maybe you can run us through those ones.
All right. So today, we are doing about 14.8 per bank rate, as against yesterday's 14.7. So automatically there is some depreciation of the currency, as can be observed. Yeah, and I think we've experienced the stability, and like I've told you, things will smoothen up. And so we've experienced some depreciation yesterday we did, today we have. Let's see how the remaining days of the week
will look like. All right, Ima, thank you very much for joining me. It's been a very productive conversation this morning on the Business Breakfast on Zed. Thank you. I hope to talk to you again tomorrow. And you mentioned you're not too well, so please get well soon. Get well soon.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, but thanks for making time to talk to us. All right. So if you're still if you're still tuned in to this station, you are listening to Business Breakfast on Zed 101.9 FM. Now we're going to go into a very important conversation very soon. We're talking about burnout. What are the strategies that you can put in place to avoid burning out? We're going to talk to a psychologist who's going to share some thoughts on that. And I believe that conversation is something you don't want to miss. So stay tuned with us. But of course, you can join the conversation on our social media platforms. We are on Instagram, Facebook, and X at ZFMGH, and also on TikTok and YouTube at Z Multimedia. At Z Multimedia. And you can also join us via WhatsApp or call us on 0544-321019. 0544-321019. Let's go for a spot of music. When we come back, we'll go into the conversation with the counselor on burnout.
She smells like a percolator, her perfume lifestyle, leisure, and business radio.
Zed 101.9 FM.
Your lifestyle, leisure, and business radio. Stay tuned to your lifestyle, leisure, and business radio.
Zed 101.9 FM.
Well, you're still listening to Z101.9 FM. And this morning, we're talking to Dr. Isaac Newman Arthur, who is a medical director and clinical psychologist at UPSC Clinic. Now, we're talking about burnout, strategies to avoid burnout in a fast-paced environment. And burnout has become a significant challenge in our fast-paced, high-pressure world, affecting individuals across various industries and roles. Now, this discussion will delve into the concept of burnout itself. We'll also try to understand its causes, the warning signs, and then the impact it has on our mental and physical well-being. We'll be exploring some actionable strategies for managing stress, setting healthy boundaries, prioritizing self-care to maintain balance. And additionally, we'll be looking to the responsibilities of leaders and organizations in fostering a supportive environment and promoting work-life harmony. If you joined us earlier during the Business Brief segment, I spoke to you about a gentleman called George. George was very hardworking. George was doing all the donkey jobs at the office. He did everything, but he also had other responsibilities outside that. Like many of us, he would go to work by 7 a.m., and stay there, do all the hard work, and then get home by 8 p.m. Goes to see his mother, his parents, who had dementia, take care of them. And he was stressing. They advised him that, George, go get some help from some counselor. He did. But then that didn't reduce his workload. And eventually, George broke down at age 53, which is very sad. Now, George could be you, George could be me, George could be anybody at all. And that is why this conversation is very important, so that you don't burn out. You know, at Zed, on Business Breakfast on Zed, what we focus on largely is to help you to come out very well, help you to be productive, help you to do well in your business. And so this morning, that is why we're having this conversation. And the guest has already joined me over the phone lines, and we're going to get into the conversation right away. But just before that, shout outs goes to Rasking. Rasking is listening to us. You're on a road trip with your cousin Unique and your good friend Nana. You're all cruising together. Shout outs to you. Thank you for staying tuned. But if you also want me to give some shout outs to you, you want me to talk to you, listening to your questions, you want to join the conversations, you can join us on ZFMGH at ZFMGH on Instagram, Facebook, and X, ZFMGH. And then on YouTube and TikTok, we are Z Multimedia. You could also join us over WhatsApp or maybe over a phone call if you, as you may, 0544-321019, 0544-321019. Our guest, Dr. Isaac Newman Arthur, is on the phone lines. Doc, good morning.
Yeah, good morning, and greetings to those who are listening.
Yeah. Thank you so much for accepting to have this conversation with me this morning. Doc, let's start from here. What exactly is burnout, and how can someone recognize the early warning signs?
Okay, so before I start, I also want to say I'm the PRO for Ghana Psychological Association.
Oh, wow.
So, there is also something called the Ghana Psychological Association, a body that cannot be for all the mental health workers in psychology and counseling. So,
right.
Yeah, so burnout is basically the last stage of, let's say, I'll say stress. But so let me start from what stress is.
All right.
So stress is basically a response to internal or external demand. A response to internal or external demand. So we say a stressor is the demand, and it can be either internal or external. So external stresses may be many. So traffic, financial issues, responsibilities, demands at work, career, education, so those are external things. Then internal stresses are the things that really people don't see, but it affects us. So things like negative thinking, that is stressful. When you are overly negative about things, things like anger, things like bitterness, pessimism, things like, I've talked about anger, I've talked about bitterness, when you are in some form of emotional pain and you are finding it difficult to let go, all those things are stresses. So any demand, that overwhelms the body is what we say stress. And we have different kinds of, types of stresses, right? And different types of stress. So we have acute stress, we have episodic stress, and we have a chronic stress, and we have what we call eustress.
Okay. So
eustress is basically eustress, EU stress, right? Eustress is basically the day-to-day normal, mild, challenges we go through that is not overwhelming. So you wake up, you have to clean just a bit, you have to go to work a bit. On a normal day, you realize that though there are demands, but it's not overwhelming. Those are the normal demands that most of us go through sometimes. And for those ones, even the body needs a little of that to perform.
Right.
And I'll come to the body's response about this. Right. Then we have the acute stress. Acute stress is stress which is overwhelming, but it is, it's short-lived.
Okay.
So, for example, there is something that is happening today, you're overwhelmed, the next day it goes away. Or maybe a day or two, you're overwhelmed about maybe a project, a responsibility at home, something, and it goes away. So those are short duration stress we call acute stress. Then we have the episodic stress. Episodic stress is stress that comes in episodes. So let's say short stress, that is an episode. So let's say 2 days you're overwhelmed, it goes away. Then the next 2 weeks it comes back again, it goes away. Another week it comes again, it goes away. So those are in episodes. We call episodic. Then we have the chronic stress. The chronic stress is stress that is overwhelming almost every day for a long time. So you have this person almost every day, something is overwhelming for them. They can be work, they can be married, they can be responsibilities at home, they can be whatever. So they are always stressed, right? So this is basically what stress is. And the body actually goes into a certain response, when anybody is stressed. You see, so whenever you meet a stressor, the body actually, we first of all marshal our coping strategies to deal with the stressor. So all of us have basic coping strategies may go in but the body also marshals its internal coping mechanism to be able to make sure that the body is brought back to a state of equilibrium. Because the body cannot go coexist with stress. See, the body system is so tightly regulated in order to make sure that the body's organs and every system is healthy enough for proper functioning. So anything that overwhelms the body marshals its internal mechanisms to be able to deal with the stressor, either to move away from the stressor or to fight the stressor. So we call something the fight or flight response, either to move away from the stressor or to deal with the stressor, right? And so what happens is that anytime you face a stressor, the body marshals its, nervous system. We call it autonomic nervous system. And one of them we call the sympathetic nervous system, right? It's the body's internal mechanism to deal with the stressor. And when this system is activated, what happens is that there is a release of all kinds of chemicals in the body that regulate certain systems in the body in the bid to bring the body into a state of equilibrium. Otherwise, everything else becomes dysfunctional in the body. So cortisol is released, norepinephrine is released, epinephrine is released. These chemicals are released and they affect body systems. You see, so for example, your sugar is affected, your blood pressure is affected, your heart rate is affected, your breathing is affected, your immunity is affected. All body systems. So anybody who is stressed, you realize that they start experiencing certain symptoms of stress because these chemicals are released. But when these chemicals are released, consistently released, the body is always in high alert and all these processes are going on, whether they like it or not. And if it is maintained for a longer period of time, then the body starts malfunctioning.
Right.
And that is when the body goes into that state of burnout, where your coping strategies fail, everything is all over the place, and the body can no longer take it, and the body can no longer function well. That is what burnout is.
Right.
So basically, your body is overwhelmed, consistently stressed, to the point that it is no longer able to function the way it's supposed to function. And you have all kinds of symptoms, that we probably may talk about.
Right. Okay. So we'll come into the causes. I mean, we'll look into the factors that actually contribute to burnout. But just before that, why do you think it has become an issue, a very common issue in today's world?
Yeah, basically, usually it's more of lifestyle and changing demand. I think that is where the problem is. Because, see, in those days, we didn't have a lot of things that we want to have. So someone gets up and they don't want to have a car because really, car was like a luxury kind of thing. And you wake up and really, it's your backyard farming, normal food for your family. And you may go to the farm and walk and see things. There was a lot of, some leisure and relaxation almost all the time. Now everything is so complex. People have to do multiple things to survive. Surviving is very, very, very expensive. People's taste for things have changed. So lifestyle and expectations and demands and the changing needs and stuff has made a lot of things a bit more overwhelming. Those days, you don't have as much traffic as we have now because you don't have a lot of cars.
Right.
Now there are too many cars. Those days you have a lot more people in the rural areas, not the urban areas. Now almost everybody is in the urban areas. Those days people would live in mud houses and, with, something cool. Now everybody wants to build, some very expensive house. So everything has changed. And with that change comes its own problems and responsibilities. Now if you go to workplaces, there are a lot of things happening at workplaces that it didn't used to be there. Now the demands to be able to, survive in the business space, in your professional space, the demands for even things about academics have changed. There are newer things that have to be learned. So everything has changed in this world. So it's made a lot of things a bit more stressful. Those days with extended family systems, you realize that even if you don't have money, there are relatives who are ready to support you. We were living in compound houses. People used to chat their problems away. There were people you could call on, you could visit,
right.
You could spend time with. Now everything has changed. Now almost every house, every room, there's a TV, right? You have kids who come around and they need some games, they need some modern toys, they need all kinds of things. So now people want to, go step out, and buy all kinds of expensive things if they want to move on and be relevant, and meet, the societal expectations. So all these things have changed, and that has added a lot to, the risk factors for stress.
Right. So of course, one of the issues will be productivity. Society has emphasized on productivity so much. Do you think that it will? It is one of the reasons why burnout is on the rise.
So it may not be productivity itself, but the demand for productivity.
Okay.
So the demand. So I talked about a lot of changing needs and demand. All throughout generations, human beings have been productive. But now we have been productive in many things at a particular time.
Right.
So someone has a side job and has a main job, they have to perform. Someone has a marriage, they have to perform. Someone goes to school, they have to perform. So you have one person who has a side job, has a main job, has an online job, has some form of education.
Right.
They have family to take care of their extended family. So the same person has to be productive in many areas.
Right.
So it may not be productivity itself, but the fact that people have to be productive in many things that they're taking on.
I see. Okay, Doc. So let's talk a bit about the causes. What are the most significant factors that lead to burnout in our environment today? What are the most significant factors?
Well, there are multiple things. I will look at it: physical, mental, social, and spirituality factors.
Okay, sure.
Right. Physical issues. We may talk about, the environment, things with traffic, things with where you live, things with access to certain products. So if you are in an environment where access is very far away, you may have to travel. So those physical things. Then again, when it comes to health issues, dealing with chronic illnesses and diseases, and having to manage someone who has a chronic illness, the disease itself is stressful. Right. The management itself is stressful, and what you need to do to be able to maintain some form of appreciable health also is stressful. Dealing with chronic pain, and issues with mobility, with disability can be very, very stressful. These are all physical factors.
Right.
Then again, these are mental factors. I talked about bitterness. I talked about anger issues, negative thinking. To those who are very, very negative about life, they are always on high alert. So what someone will laugh about and be very hopeful about, another person is thinking so much about them. And those are internal stresses. Having to deal with trauma, traumatic experiences, right from childhood, and also current traumatic experiences. It can be rape, it can be abuse, it can be something. And a lot of people use work as an escape, from abusive environment. Domestic violence is a stressful event. Things about loss, losing something. It may be a job, it may be a relative or a loved one or someone. Loss is also puts undue stress on people. And having to deal with some mental health issues like anxiety, depression, bipolar, schizophrenia and things like that, that impedes your functioning and actually makes things worse for you. You are not functional, you have to be overly dependent on someone, and a parent or a guardian who has to take care of an unwell person. Those things are very, very stressful. Then social-related problems. We can look at marriage and relationships. And one of the most important stressors for many people. So if marriage is not going well or the responsibilities associated with relationships and marriage can be stressful, we talk about socio-economic problems. And that is where you go into people's careers and job-related stresses. And particularly for the job, the setting and the setup and the expectations can be a major stressor for people. There are some work environments, and the place is so cozy that it's even better than you have. So the work environment is even a distressor for you. But there are some work environments you go and everything is all over the place. And that environment you have to work in for a long time can be stressful. And if there are, expectations and responsibilities placed on you is also overwhelming. It can also be stressful. Having to commute from one point to the other, to a work environment, stressful. So, for example, in Accra, someone lives at Oyibi and works at around Kaneshi or Accra Central. And when the person lives at Amasama and has to commute to Accra Central, it's not an easy thing when it comes to work. Financial problems and the limitations of finance. So if someone doesn't have money and they have to, go look for money and stuff, that can put undue stress on them. What it also means is that they may not be able to access things easily. Then we talk about tradition and cultural things. There are some cultures and traditional things around events, in certain communities can become an important stressor, particularly for widowhood rights and things like that. And things around funeral and celebrations and things like that can be overwhelming for people. Then we also talk about social media and the stresses of maintaining a certain social status on social media, maintaining relevance on social media. If you are an influencer, right? And if you are someone who is a celebrity and you have to perform, whether a musician or whoever you are, you need to maintain some presence on social media, managing online businesses. All these things have become important stresses. Then again to a cyberbullying and things that happen, on social media. It actually is also a stressor. Then moving on to spirituality-related problems. Unhealthy belief systems and worldview can be a stressor. So someone may not have external issues too much, but it's how they think about life. The principles they subscribe to and the values they subscribe to, they can be a source of, stress for the person. Then, religious abuse and things that people are exploited on religious grounds. So you subscribe to a certain religion, the demands of the religion and the activities and the things you have to subscribe to on a daily or weekly basis can be a source of stress. So there are some people who have subscribed to a certain religion, and they have to be involved in all kinds of things every day or throughout the week. And that can serve as an important stressor for the person. Having to maintain network with your religious or social network can be an important source of stressor. So all these things. So you realize it's kind of a bit complex.
Wow.
So we have one person who has a risk factor from all these four groups, and the person has to be available for everybody. So it is not easy being a human being and living in a certain generation.
Right.
And that is why people must be quick to empathize and not to judge or to brand or to label. Because you have no clue what the person has to go through to put food on the table,
right,
or to smile when they come to work.
Very interesting and very eye-opening, Doc. So, Doc, can we also talk about a bit about how you can identify that in another person? Because these things that you mentioned, maybe there's somebody listening to me now, and then they can relate to whatever you are mentioning. How can I also identify stress in another person?
Generally, there are some signs and symptoms, for stress that you may see or the person may experience. So some of they may have headaches, they may have aches and pain, they may have some dizziness, palpitation. They may also have some diseases that may come up: hypertension, diabetes, cancer, low libido. They may have anxiety symptoms or depressive symptoms. So these are non-specific symptoms. Usually people go to the hospital and they feel unwell. You have these kind of non-specific symptoms. You go to the hospital, they do all kinds of labs, they say you are fine. Meanwhile, you're unwell. You generally feel overwhelmed. You may actually struggle to pay attention and concentrate.
Right.
You come to work. Anybody who comes to work and is not functional, and you realize that their functioning is going down. They are becoming more and more socially isolated. Some people may communicate it on their statuses. Some people may initiate a certain conversation. You give them assignments, they are not able to do it. this person hosts a certain radio show and start to realize that no, this person really, it's not, the way they are. It's like there's something we call absenteeism and presenteeism. Absenteeism means that the person didn't show up. Presenteeism means that the person showed up and they are not functional.
Doc, repeat that again. Repeat that one more time.
I said absenteeism and presenteeism.
Okay.
So absenteeism means that, for example, you didn't come to work. Presenteeism means that we saw your body at work, but you are not functional. And it happens a lot at the workplace. Some people come to workplace and they know they came to work, but they are not functional. They may be behind their PC trying to type, but they realize that no, it's just not going well. And most of the issues at the workplace may be on the level of stress. Most of the reduced performance and performance issues is because people are just overwhelmed or they are going through something that is overwhelming them and it's affecting their function, right? And it affects their relationships. People are going through all kinds of relationship problems. It may be stress related. People are struggling to cope with life, and particularly even achieve their dreams. They keep postponing and procrastination. Actually, procrastination may be a symptom of stress. So if their project, the person keeps postponing the masters or postponing this project or this assignment, they keep, postponing them. They will struggle to live independently.
Wow.
So you have this person always comes to you for help. Always comes to you for help. It is a sign that they are not just okay in there, and they are overly depending on others. And they get to realize that they become dysfunctional in society. So you have this person who is just a mess, who is always causing problems. It may be a sign that they are going through, some stresses in life, and they are not able to do them.
Very, 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 very informative stuff right there, Doc. So now, for somebody listening to me, I just want you to know that sometimes it's not like Obi Chirene, Doc. As we usually say, sometimes we go like, we are talking to you. Now, those of you who don't understand, Uchirehon means like you are some way all knowing, or you try to act in a particular way like that. So it means that not every time is somebody actually cheering their home, right? But there are times that they could be going through something beyond that. And maybe you are in a relationship, you're saying, I'm talking to you, you're not minding me, I'm asking you questions, you don't want to talk to me. And then you also get pissed. Oftentimes, Doc, we get pissed because the other person is not being forthcoming in conversations and all of that. So actually, it could be a symptom of stress, isn't it?
Yes. So really, we want to be happy. No human being wants to be sad. We want to engage. We want to be present. We want to be productive. We want to be around. Every human being wants that. So if nobody really wants conflict, nobody really wants a mess around them, nobody wants to live them, nobody wants to be sad from work. So if you see these things with people, you would have to pause and be more empathetic and actually listen and just ask what is happening with you. And you'll be surprised. At your workplace, for example, you could, that some of the people are not too effective. You could have a conversation with them and you'll be surprised what you hear. And the things people have to go through on a daily basis just to show up, you have no idea. Unfortunately, when you ask someone, how are you? It's normal for us to say, I'm fine. Sometimes you see the consulting, when someone comes and I ask, how are you? They say, I'm fine.
But
then I thought myself, how are you? Before they now decide to open up. So we all tend to want to put up a certain, good, presence. We all try to hide behind something. Because sometimes we think people may not understand that. People may dismiss our symptoms. People may trivialize what we're saying. People may, divulge information to others. They may gossip about us. They may look down on us. We may lose a certain status or a certain respect. People feel we are strong, meanwhile we are broken in there. So we all don't want any negative experience around us. So we tend to hide, whatever we feel. Sometimes for me, I'm in the consulting room and someone comes and I am a mess myself. I know I'm overwhelmed, I'm tired, yet I have to smile because there's a patient around. You know, and sometimes, you know, when a patient comes and you're not smiling too much, they think that, oh, maybe that day you are not nice, but they have no clue that you have a headache. You have to take their head. You know, so sometimes we just have to pause and be a little more, you know, show a little more concern. And we'll be surprised what we hear about what people are going through.
Right. Anyway, if you're still listening to us, if you're tuned into Z101.9 FM, and this is our morning show, what we call Business Breakfast on Zed. You can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and X at ZFMGH, and you can also join the conversation. Maybe you want to share something, you want to ask a question, you have some thoughts to share. You can text us on WhatsApp, or maybe even call into the show on 0544 321019 0544 321019. This 19, sorry. One more time, let me mention 0544 321019. You're listening to Business Breakfast on Zed, and we're having a conversation with Dr. Isaac Newman Arthur, and we're talking about burnout. Now, we talked about the causes. We talked about the contributing factors that lead to burnout. Now, we're going to go into some prevention strategies, Doc. What are some simple daily habits that can help prevent burnout?
So those are coping strategies, you know, measures that we put in place to be able to cope, right? And we all have different coping strategies we built over time. You know, some are effective, some are not. So we have effective coping strategies and we have maladaptive or dysfunctional coping strategies, right? So the maladaptive and dysfunctional coping strategies are strategies that are ineffective and also affect your health, right? It is distracting. So in your bid to cope, whatever strategy you have is ineffective and it would actually harm you. So for example, people use alcohol to cope with stress. They use illicit sex. They use blame. They use anger outbursts. They even use abuse and all kinds of things to cope. Those are maladaptive and they are ineffective and they are also dysfunctional. They will end up destroying you, destroying everything around you. So those ones we discourage, but they are also effective coping strategies. And it starts off by identifying what the stresses are and knowing what to do with the stressor. So what you need to do is to, first of all, make a list of your stresses. So you need to ask yourself, why am I tired? You know, you need to have this introspection and evaluate, you know, your life and the things around you and ask yourself, why am I stressed? And if you're able to identify that, then you need to determine what coping strategies will work. So the effective coping strategies, we have emotion-focused coping strategies and we have problem-focused coping strategies. Emotion-focused coping strategies are the things that you do to feel good so that you are not overwhelmed by the stress. So the things that we do, right? You go sit somewhere, you play music, you laugh, you know, you enjoy time. You know, those things, you know, help you, you know, give you positive experiences that makes you feel better about the stressor. Then again, too, we have the problem-focused coping strategies where you identify the stressor and you find solutions to the stressor. So, for example, you are seeing that you have to go to work, you have things to take care of. It's overwhelming. That is the identified stressor. How do I then fix it? Okay, let me train my face to help me at home. Or let me have a conversation with my husband to help me at home. Or let me get a maid servant. So now you have identified the problem and you are fixing it. You are finding solutions to the problem. Or maybe it's academics. You are struggling, you know, with your academics. You know, then you ask yourself, what measures do I have to take in order to take this stress of academics? Maybe it's traffic and you work in Accra, but you live at Oyibi. Probably you live alone. How do I fix it? Can I, you know, in the next range, look for a place around Accra? It may be a little bit expensive, yet it reduces my stress. Because if you calculate transport from Oyibi to Accra, and if I rented something which is a little more expensive, it really balances out. So you are actually looking, to fix problems. I'm having marital challenges. It's stressful for me. I'm overwhelmed. How do I fix it? What are the problems in my marriage and how do I fix it? So those things are problem-focused kind of coping strategy. But on the day-to-day, some of the things that you can do to ease your stresses, let me list them. The first one is have a positive attitude and thinking about the stressor. So when you are positive
Sorry, I think the network, we didn't hear you well. Maybe you can repeat that one, the daily.
Yes, so what I'm saying, there are things that if you can do on a day-to-day basis, that helps you, de-stress. The activities you get involved on a day basis, that helps you de-stress. Let me list some of them. The first one is having a positive mindset and attitude about life. So when you are positive about things, you are not, positivity does not mean you are denying the fact, but it means you are thinking about the fact in a way that is productive. But it means you are thinking about the fact in a way that is productive. So, for example, you have a marriage that is stressing you. You say, oh, this marriage is terrible. Why did I even enter into this? My world is falling apart. I don't think I'll be happy in life. You are being negative about it. You realize that you are always unhappy and stressed. But if you are positive, oh, Sally, not everybody is married though. So if I'm married, I'm blessed. There are people who are wishing for it, but I have had some. And you see, my husband, though, he has given problems, but, there is a lot more good about him. Let me enjoy the good about him, right, whilst we work on the negative things. So now you are being positive and you realize that you feel a bit more better, even though you are not able to deal with the stress. You become better. And someone is going to write an exam. And this exam is difficult. I may feel, when I feel my life has ended, being negative. You realize that you are overwhelmed. But this exam, even if I feel, I'll write again, I'll move on. No exam will determine my future. You realize that the second person, because they are positive about the stressor, they are able to do better. So whenever you cannot deal with the stressor, you may have to change how you see the stressor, right? So at the workplace, things are a bit stressful, right? Someone may be a bit negative about the workplace. Another person will say, not everybody has a work. And if I have work, I'm blessed. I will do my best. So changing how you see and think about the stressor makes it less, unbearable. And that helps. Second one is a positive friendships and relationships. At some point, you have to determine which friendships are beneficial or not, which friendships are stressful or not, and eliminate the ones that are not beneficial. Because the people you surround yourself with influences you significantly. And for some of us, we know the people who are the stressors, but we still keep them around for some other reason. So healthy friendships distresses you. People who encourage you, challenge you, give you positive vibes. You need those kind of people, and you need to distance yourself from unhealthy friendships. Then you need to rest. Sleep is important for stress. So as much as possible, you don't carry work home. Home should be an environment for sleep. And every adult needs about 5 to 8 hours of sleep. Kids need about 8 to 12 hours, and babies need about 12 to 16 hours to be able to de-stress, for the body to function well. So you need a lot of sleep. So don't carry work home. As much as possible, if once a while work home, but fine. But if consistently you have to continue work at home, it doesn't help. Then again, to relaxation is a form of rest. Where you go sit somewhere, away from the stresses of life, and you go and, chill a bit. You go sit by the pool, rock your feet in the pool, order for for lemon juice, and look in the skies and thank God. Those things, go to the beach, those places of relaxation really, really help. Then we encourage nutrition, good nutrition. A lot of fruits and veggies help. Doing smoothies and those things. It really, really helps. Then we talk about, limiting your expectations and setting, realistic goals, smart goals, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound goals. Sometimes our expectations is what creates the problem and not life itself. So when people have huge expectations, and they want to achieve this, those expectations become the stressor. Then again, to taking things one day at a time instead of piling things up and doing them all at once. When you spread them, what you are doing is that you are spreading stress over time. So you realize that you don't feel overwhelmed and are taking those responsibilities. Again, practice forgiveness. You forgive people quickly and let it go quickly, because the body responds to external stresses the same way they respond to internal stresses like bitterness and unforgiveness. Then you let things go quickly. Practicing thankfulness is one of the strategies. Counting your blessings instead of counting your losses. And really, whatever you are unhappy about is someone else's prayer topic. So when you are thankful, you realize that life becomes better. You are not overwhelmed with things. Then again, we encourage people to focus on themselves and stop comparing themselves with other people, particularly people who are on social media and doing all kinds of things. People are comparing themselves with almost everything around them. Because of that, they are overwhelmed. Right? Another tip is to be content with what you have, and don't wish for many things, because it's the simplicity of life that you realize that life is not as stressful as we have made it. You really don't need that car. You really don't need that house. You really don't need whatever you are fighting for to be okay with life. You really don't need them. So if you think about it carefully and you reduce your appetite, so people are building all kinds of things, invest on all kinds of things. By the time they finish, they're in their 60s and they are dying, and someone else will come and enjoy. So Ecclesiastes will say a chasing after the wind. The meaninglessness of life.
Right. So
people are investing so much in many things that they really don't need. So people should simplify their life. Then let me also add maybe two more things. Minding your own business. Sometimes minding your own business is a distressor. Because people, when you want to have an opinion about everything, you want to participate in everything, you want everything to go your way, life is stressful and overwhelming. Then we advise married couples to be intimate also, because intimacy actually reduces stress. And the chemicals that are released during intimacy it helps with stress. So we have the dopamine, we have oxytocin, we have prolactin, we have endorphins, we have serotonin. All those things will make you feel better, ease pain and stress, boost your immunity, and also help you sleep and those things. We also encourage intimacy a lot. So these are basic things, but it starts off by identifying what the stresses are and trying to deal with those stresses. And if all your coping strategies are failing, just walk into any hospital and seek the help of the mental health worker.
Wow, very, 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 very good points you make there, Doc. So let's talk about. I mean, since you are in the consulting room and you get to engage with people from time to time, can you share a personal story or maybe an example of someone dealing with burnout and how they overcame it?
Well, one of the things that really hit me was someone who had gone through a difficult relationship, and it was really affecting her. So a news came, let's break up. Within 3 days, he was confused, was behaving abnormally, went to work. Everybody realized things were off. He herself wasn't even aware that things were off. Throwing the weight about, shouting at everybody, she almost lost her job. Right? But after assessment, realized that he was going through what we call acute stress. And we had to help her with therapy. And she's back to work.
Wow.
There was another person who signed a check for a client, and she couldn't even remember what check she signed and who she signed it to. It was becoming a problem. And if you go into a life, stress plus. So instead of the work environment sacking her, they brought her for assessment and help. A lot of the disciplinary issues and laying off and sacking people, if they actually refer them to seek help, those people would actually do better at work. I remember there was another one. His blood pressures were always in the skies, but he was on the right medication. Stress influences physical things, BP, sugar, and the rest. Right? And it was plus. He stresses with home, with kids, with job, with everything, and he was not able to manage the stresses. So what happened? So he was on the same medication. Every time BP was up, no control. So at some point, he actually decided to throw away the medication. Right? Because if I'm on the medication and still not coming down, why should I even keep taking them? So when he came, actually after assessment and help, reduced all his stresses, BP, reduced significantly with the same medication. And I remember he said, "Oh, what did you do?" I said, "I didn't do anything. I just reduced your stresses." Right? And that really helped. And stress, that is why pregnancy actually is a risk factor for a lot of diseases. Because pregnancy is stress. The baby in there, the body recognized as a foreign, entity. And the baby dependent on the mother with all the physical changes, and you have to change days and moving around is difficult and all that. So there are all kinds of stress hormones that are released during pregnancy. And that is why pregnant women are at an increased rate of depression and hypertension in pregnancy and postpartum depression and those things. Right? So if you have pregnant women coming up with all kinds of chronic disease they didn't have just because they were pregnant. So stress is really, really real. And it affects performance at work and things like that. So most of these organizations, before you lay someone off or sack someone for whatever issues, just send them for assessment. And you'll be surprised that when people receive help, they become better workers.
Right. Very, wow. That's good. Actually, we have about 10 minutes to go. Quite unfortunate. So if you're still listening to, if you're still tuned into Z101.9 FM, this is a business breakfast on Zed. And you can follow us on our social media, ZFMGH on Instagram, Facebook, and X. And you can join the conversation on WhatsApp at 0544-321019. Doc is still here. You want to ask him a question. You want to share a thought. You want to ask him whether what you're going through is burnout or whatever. You can just reach out on 0544-321019. Doc, we're almost ending a conversation. Now, I want us to talk to somebody that is already experiencing burnout. What are the first steps they should take to recover?
Well, let me start from the workplace. Right?
All right. Yeah. Very important. Yeah.
Because I'm sure a lot of workplaces are listening. People spend almost all their life while they are at work. So the workplace, every employer should intentionally think about work, the flow of information and work, the responsibilities, the setting and the setup, the HR system. It should be evaluated and intentionally designed to improve on the welfare of workers. If you do that, there will be increased productivity. And again, relationships at workplace must not be stressful. And workers shouldn't be coming to work and wonder what is going to happen between him or her and the boss. There are some bosses who are the stressors. Some of them are vindictive. They have anger outbursts. They are abusive. They throw their weight around. They are overly demanding. They are overly particular about it. And most of those, bosses, they have their own internal conflict. They themselves need some help. You see? And a lot of them, they have their own personal issues, and they actually deflect, and put it on the workers. So the workplace must be designed in a way that is less stressful. There are some places you go to. I go around workplaces, do assessments, mental health assessments on stress and losses, give talks and stuff. And there are some workplaces you go to, and I wish I was even working there. Right? You go to some workplaces and the setup and setting alone, the paintings, the flow, you realize that someone intentionally thought about it. You know, if you go to some parts of the world, they have even siesta for workers, where you can go catch some sleep for, let's say, an hour. They have all kinds of cubicles that people can just go and take a nap for 1 hour and come back to work. We need that to be able to increase productivity. Actually, I think Ghana loses about $5 billion, you know, in terms of productivity because of mental health problems. Globally, it's about 1.5 to about $2.5 trillion because of mental health issues, right? Then for an individual, I think I mentioned that the first step is to identify what the stressor is and be tailored towards dealing with the particular stresses in your life and develop, you know, a daily kind of stress relieving kind of routine. One of the things I do for stress relieving for myself is to sleep. I sleep like nobody's business. I don't sleep early. Sometimes my kids even complain. But that's why you sleeping too much. I sleep. When I'm awake, I'm awake. But when I'm asleep, I'm also asleep.
Wow.
So these are the things to suggest.
Yeah, Doc, just because you were talking a bit about the workplace, which I think is very, very important, maybe we should highlight how leaders can foster a culture of work-life balance without compromising productivity. Maybe we should talk about that briefly, and then we will talk about some resources that we can people can use. I mean, you would recommend for managing and recovering from burnout. Then we can go.
I think the HR system was set up for organizations to handle, you know, staff-related problems. But unfortunately, a lot of HRs, you know, actually are against their staff and they are for management. They should change. You know, if there is a good HR system for a workplace, nobody is greater than policy.
Right.
Nobody is bigger to abuse. Nobody has a say as to what happens. The systems work, regardless of who you are. I think that is the gap in various organizations. So the owner of the job can do whatever they like. Nobody can question it. The management can take any decision. Whether the staff are happy or not, nobody can question it. Staff members cannot go and express how they feel to their HR and seek for redress because they are afraid that they will be, you know, vilified or something will happen to them. So the HR system must virtually be an independent mediator between staff and management. HR systems must continually review, systems that make sure that the welfare of staff members is actually preserved and protected. I think that is what corporations must do. If that happens, then a boss cannot come and insult or abuse a staff, and the staff member doesn't know what to do. And the boss can do what they like, and nobody can question them. In some parts of the world, you can't do that. But unfortunately, in some parts of the world, too, you can do that. So I think that the focus should be on HR systems, and there should be constant feedback from staff members as to what they feel. Then the workplaces must also have this regular mental health education. I go around a lot, mental health education thing, where you give talks, at the workplace. They should, as part of their medical screening for the year, they should add mental health screening. When it comes to also their, there's something called employment assistance programs, where, all kinds of measures are taken to be able to assist in job, workplace issues and stuff like that. They may even have to get in contact with a mental health worker where workers can talk to anytime they have problems. Those systems really help, deal with some of these problems at the workplace.
All right, Doc. So finally, just talk to us about what resources. Are there some books, some podcasts, professional help you would recommend for someone managing or recovering from burnout?
Well, now in Ghana, thankfully, we have made huge advances when it comes to mental health. I think governments over the years have done well. So now you can go to any hospital and you find a mental health worker there. Even if they don't have anybody there to help you, we have psychiatrists, psychologists, counselors, we have mental health nurses, all kinds of mental health workers, and they will help you. So walk into any hospital and ask for it, and you can also get in touch. If you want to talk to me, you can get in touch. Then again, if you go to the Mental Health Authority, website, they have this call, what do you call it? They have this number you can call when you have some problems. But walk into any hospital, you'll find someone there who would be able to help you. And when you go to online, you can type dealing with burnout. You have all kinds of information that is helpful. Just type. You go to YouTube, type how to deal with burnout. People have made all kinds of videos about it. But those videos, you may have to make sure that the person is a professional. Because professionals have been trained to address issues well. And I think you should be fine.
And you should be fine. Doc, thank you so much. Thank you. I just want to appreciate you so much for making time to talk to us this morning. I hope we get to talk again another time.
Thank you very much. I'm grateful.
All right. Thank you. Well, thank you very much for listening. This is Business Breakfast on Zed, and we just had a conversation on burnout with Dr. Isaac Newman Arthur on the subject of burnout, and he's giving us a lot of keys, some things that you should do to be able to stay afloat and avoid burnout in your work and whatever you're doing. So that brings us to the end of today's show. We've had such a very insightful conversation, and you need to remember that burnout isn't a sign of weakness. It's a signal that it's time to prioritize your well-being. And of course, small changes in your routine, setting boundaries and taking care of yourself can make all the difference. I want to read a scripture to you, and I hope that it helps you to be able to handle burnout. Now, the Bible says in the book of Psalm 127, verse 2, it says that it is vain for you to rise up early and return home at night. But God gives us, where's the scripture? God gives his people rest. And so one of the things that you need very much is rest. Remember that this is a reminder that God provides for his people even when they sleep. So sometimes you need to take some time to de-stress. My name is Raphael Nitrebi Hammond, and I'm excited to have been your host right from 6 a.m. till this point. We meet same time tomorrow. Brighter Side is up next with NY The Brand. See you tomorrow.